NSFW, waiters of Reddit, what's some ducked uppage you overheard while waiting tables? Had a guy cry right before I gave them dessert menus. He was just saying over and over again, "You make me feel like a failure," to his wife. I just dropped them off and said, "Whenever you're ready, comma." I was clearing a table at a 40th when I heard the mother of the birthday boy, a lady I would guess was in her 70s, loudly proclaim, "40 years ago today, son. My pussy was wrapped around your head." I couldn't help but burst out laughing. The son looked mortified. Often would have groups of women who shame each other into sharing dishes they clearly intended to eat themselves. "Oh, you won't eat all that, right? It's so much food, it's extremely uncomfortable." I'm fairly certain I witnessed the beginnings of a divorce. I don't remember the specifics, but it started out as a normal couple, but soon turned to a lot of "Why didn't you tell me? You should have. Can we not do this in public?" and things of the sort. The husband left before the meal was over and the wife was crying. Giving the check to her was one of the most awkward things I've ever done. You see here people cheating on their partners more than I expected. I worked in a resort, so I've heard a number of failed marriage proposals. I've commented about them before. The worst was the guy who got "I've told you, I'm never going to marry you." He stormed off and she finished the desert. The ring came on. He eventually came back though. Felt bad for him, but she clearly wasn't leading him on. I served this table who got a phone call that their son had been in a horrible car accident just as they got their food. Their reaction was super rough. Apparently, I took too long getting this woman her quesadilla burger, so in protest she defecated on the table. Cops were called and a fun time was had by all. Not a waitress, but while dining in an upscale restaurant in Milwaukee, I overheard a wealthy woman explain to her friend why she should only hire middle children as housekeepers because they are used to being told what to do and always know their place. I worked for a restaurant that had 3 owners. One of them had a wife that died, but he was dating again. He came into his own restaurant on Valentine's Day with his GF, her kids, and began to cry at the table. I was their waiter. It was incredibly uncomfortable for everyone. I've witnessed the most awkward date I've ever seen on Valentine's Day. They were both on their phone constantly and he would leave the table multiple times for long periods of time. I didn't overhear them talking, but it was just painful to watch. They both didn't want to be there. Edit. Spelling. Girl, "I'll just lie to my mom so we can be together this weekend." Guy, "Sound nice, I want you so much. But what are we going to do about our dad?" Creepy. Sometimes when I go out to eat, I like to pretend like I was just saying something awful as the server comes up to the table. Things that make you wonder the context. And that was the last time I took a shower with my dad. Ever since then they have really increases the security at the daycare place. After that I had to use a catheter for weeks. 2 old couples. One guy said, "Now that a black family moved in next door, I'll never sell my house." Double quote. The other guy said, "If you see him outside when people are looking at your house, ask him about his garden. The homebuyers will just think he's the landscaping guy." Double quote. My girlfriend and I have both waited on a dominatrix and a client of hers more than once. It was weird, but not nearly as weird as you might expect. She makes him wear women's underwear under a strategically poorly buttoned button-down shirt so people could potentially see his pink sheer bra, and tips really well. Usually asks the hostess for one of the more experienced servers and explains the situation to her beforehand. Definitely a little odd, but not like she was pegging him at the table or anything. I heard a lady tell her elderly dad, "I hope you have money saved up because there's no way I'm paying for your funeral." And then she stabbed me and touched my scrotum. Used to wait tables. Once, around 9:30 at night, this couple comes in with a small boy who is around 4 years old and in his pajamas. The man and woman make out the whole time they're there. The kid, who is being pretty well behaved all things considered, says, "I wish I could go to bed." His mom replies, "I wish I had a little girl." Ducking itch. 2 daughters talking about how they had dosed their mother's mimosa with ecstasy at brunch. Not a waiter, but I once heard the very classy couple next to us say, "Baby, your D tastes different. Is you cheating?" Not overheard, but when I was serving, This very overweight woman's left breast kept coming out of her shirt. She was in a very visible table on the end and she was not doing it on purpose, but she was oblivious to it. It's not super ducked up, but I once heard a middle-aged woman describe an episode of Sabrina the Teenage Witch, scene by scene, to one of her friends in 2012. Who the duck does that? When I was waiter, I waited on this table of 3 college girls. Judging by their conversation, one had just lost her virginity the night before. The best part was, though, that she would only talk about how tiny the guy's D was. She kept asking for reassurance from her friends that not all guys were that small. I felt the urge to go up and offer to show her the right way to do it. After my shift ended, they were still there, so I went for it. Not only did she say yes, but both of her friends did too. We hopped in my car and took a short drive back to my apartment. I didn't have any condoms, but it wasn't a big deal because this was back in 1998 when the Undertaker threw mankind off Hall in a cell and plummeted 16 feet through an announcer's table. I worked as a busboy at a truck stop. Yep, lot lizards are real. I bussed tables in LA for a summer at a swanky steak restaurant on Sunset. I saw lots of celebrities, but Tom Green will always take the cake for a story. He moved his table so the whole restaurant could see him flanked by 2 prostitutes wearing almost nothing. They were disgusting all evening. Not enough to get thrown out. No idea how likely that would have been anyway. But there was lots of rubbing and one of the hookers flashed some nipple. I work for a family restaurant, so not a lot of messed up stuff happens. Well, once I was waiting a table of this couple who I swear was 2 seconds away from breaking up divorce. They hated their kids and were complaining about each other the whole time. The wife was literally like, "Excuse him," every time he supposedly did something wrong. It was pretty ducked up. Yesterday I was serving a group of guys in their 20s. Their whole convo about girls, love and porn was very comical. At the end they asked me, "Hey, my buddy likes to look at porn with a dude ducking a sex doll. Is that gay?" I just bust out laughing and replied, "Whatever floats your boat." Hurricane Katrina was fantastic for the Gulf Coast. Real estate agent. Heard some forest aid employers talking about as to how one of them went to the woods to duck with a woman. They found a dead man there, ducked first and then called the police. So another one said that he was so sorry about that one of his co-workers died, but happy that this was the perfect moment to duck his spouse. Had a 2-top come in around 7 o'clock at night. Seemed pretty normal, older Spanish looking man with a little Asian girl. Long story short, we give out coloring paper and crayons for the little ones. So by the time I got to bussing my table to seat another, I found the little girl's paper and in red crayon was written, "Call the police." At the time I was pretty sure it was the little girl just messing around, but I do not take something like this lightly. Human trafficking is a thing. So I informed my manager and we called the police. Turns out it was not a human trafficking situation, thank goodness. False alarm, but you can't be too careful. Not a waiter, but as a customer I heard a waitress complain to a co-worker that she ate out the manager for a shift off and didn't get it. Not an overheard, but the most ridiculous thing I saw was a group of people that came in often. They were called the gypsies because they split themselves up into groups smaller than our mandatory 20% tip size, but would pick up their plates and migrate between the various tables. On top of this, they would never tip. It was a huge distraction having all these people walking around with hot food while we were trying to do our job. They were noisy and loud and always sent back food and in general were not nice to deal with. Eventually the manager put his foot down and said they would have the 20% charge even if they split up tables. Put an end to practice. This was at an Outback Steakhouse. Man, I walked up to the saddest thing I've ever seen in public. It was a table of 4 people, mom, dad, and 2 kids. Dad and the kids sat silently with the saddest expressions on their faces, while mom had her laptop out on the table and a headset on her head and was cheerily chatting away with someone about the work she was doing on her computer. It might have been real estate sales. Way too late for anyone to read. 2 sisters were talking about one's fiancé registered sign. It came up that no sexual intercourse had occurred but an oral sex hid because that was okay. The other sister replied, "I won't tell mom about that." Once we had a table, a middle-aged couple, hashing out their divorce over some very expensive steaks. It was clear the husband had initiated the conversation and probably did so in a restaurant to prevent a blowout argument. The wife was very unhappy and inquired about the woman he played tennis with. Based on his reaction, she wasn't far off the mark. They were seated in the middle of a fairly intimate restaurant, so most of the patrons and staff could hear. We all felt really bad for her. I had a guy, white man, looked mid-50s aged, come in on a busy day with his wife. They were very pleasant and tipped nicely. He came back the very next day with her. As they were leaving after service, I said to them, "It was nice seeing you two yesterday. Have a great day." He stopped and told her to wait outside while he went to use the restroom. Then he comes back to me and tips me $100 in cash and told me next time I serve him to never say that to him again. Just a simple "have a great day." I was like, okay. Apparently the second time he dined in he was actually with his wife and the woman the previous day was someone else. I guess I didn't pay too much attention to detail. Then he comes back again the next day with a really young black girl, and I just realized he was dating escorts. He left me a very generous tip to keep my mouth shut. Edit. I didn't clarify earlier, but I was a tea server in a hotel. One day I was grabbing the iPad for open tables from the main restaurant and I saw him there with a different black woman. He had a bouquet of roses displayed on their table. I was working at an event and me and an older woman I worked with were serving at table. One of the people wasn't sitting down somewhere, didn't think anything of it and just put her food down anyways. The older lady saw a phone on the ground and went to pick it up, and there she is. The girl was under the table sucking one of the guys off and everyone at the table was fine with it like nothing was going on. The number one kinky question I would get from couples, businessman husband plus escort mistress combos, was, "Hey kid, take a good look at her. Now be honest and tell me you wouldn't like to duck her." Sometimes the woman was gorgeous but more often just barely attractive or a face only her mother could love. In all instances I said yes to secure a good tip. I know I'm super late, but I waited on a table where a man had just found out he had inoperable pancreatic cancer. He told me about it like I was a family member. I think he was in shock. I didn't know how to respond to him, so I just acted like he was a family member and hugged him before he left. I'll never forget it. So Chad finally gets his D in her ass and her pussy clinched so tight on mine I thought my balls were gonna pop. Bachelor party. A few years back I sat two women at a table, walked away to grab their waters and a couple of menus, and when I came back I overheard one of them say, "I just can't deal with him right now. I really can't." After I placed their order I would walk by to check up on them, but that was when it got worse. Things were getting worse between him and I, but now I can't break up with him because he has cancer. I couldn't believe those words came out of this Elaine nutcase. After I serviced another table I walked by to check in on them. He's been going to his oncologist, but the silver lining is that it doesn't look good, which means I might not have to break up with him after all. Not a waiter, but my ex-wife met in a restaurant to discuss our divorce. The waitress walks up all cheerfully and asks my ex when she's due. She wasn't pregnant. It was awesome. Left a big tip for all the awkwardness. Not a waiter, but my friend was at a high-end country club. There used to be a grocery delivery company here called Simon Delivers. The owner of the company was sitting at a table explaining to someone else that they now only hire early 20s male model types because it increased their sales some absurd amount due to lonely housewives. I was working a birthday party in the banquet room. When I went in a little before the party started there was just an older lady in the room by herself. She looked at the windows. They were closed, and said, "They're all staring at me." I asked who and she just said never mind. I didn't know if I should feel sad or spooked. Dad with his twin daughters. One was skinny, one was nominally less so. He was begging the skinny one to eat and she had this angry, stressed out expression on her face. It broke my heart. American-born Hispanic waiter. Racism. Once a couple had just got sat when the woman turned to the man and said, "Let's ask him if he can take a picture of us," and points to me while I was walking through making sure my section was clean. He replies he probably doesn't speak English. I finish wiping a table and then walk over and, in the Ducking King's English, say, "Hi, my name is Verbenablu and I will be your server. I can start you off with one of our signature cocktails, and if you would like I would be more than happy to take your picture for you." He did not look happy in the picture. Another time it wasn't my section but I was passing through and this older lady turned to her duck stick and said it's cold in here. Ask him if he can turn the heat up, to which he replied he probably doesn't speak English. Sigh. So I go get 2 glasses of water and walk over to them. Place the glasses on the table slowly while looking at them with a dumb innocent smile. And then before I depart, I stood up straight and in the King's ducking English said, hello, my name is Verbenablu and although I will not be your server tonight, I have brought some water for you and I will request that the management adjust the temperature as well. As I was walking away I heard him say, what? How was I supposed to know? He didn't say anything. Duck me. Am I supposed to wear a shirt that says I assure you I speak English while serving? Not sure if it counts. But I am a tip paid employee. Delivering pizzas. Okay, so I've got an old one and a recent one for this. Old one is, we can have delivery notes. So people will put hotel names and confirm room numbers. Cool, right? I delivered to this couple in a hotel room at the seedier hotel in town. Tipped okay. So it kind of stuck with me. A few weeks later, I'm delivering to a house in town. Those notes aren't erased unless manually done. Pull up. Pass over the pizza and she double checks the total. Seeing the notes. Next thing I know, she's asking me what it's about. I explain them, and she turns her head, screaming for her husband and asking why he had pizza delivered to a hotel room in town. Tells me to not bother with change and slams the door. I can hear the screaming as I leave. TL. DR accidentally busted a cheater. Second one. Delivering to another hotel. The Fonz look-alike answers and we're making the exchange when a woman from in the room calls. Babe, bring the lube out of the bathroom. He deadass looks at me and says she's an idiot before he hurriedly signs the receipt and closes the door. He's getting laid. Good on him. I work at a sit-down coffee shop where waiters come up and take your order, and you can have a running tab. Long story short, a very beautiful woman came in, opened her tab and sat down. Initially, I thought that she was holding interviews, common thing, but turned out that she was confronting women that her husband was cheating on her with. 5 different women came in, one right after the other and along the lines said to each, I know you've been sleeping with my husband, and you can have him, etc. in such a calm and professional manner than would dismiss them. She then called her ex-husband and told him that she met with all these women and said that she was at my coffee shop with divorce papers that he needed to sign. Needless to say, he arrived, signed the papers and yelled at her for ruining his relationships with all of them. She was a complete badass and handled everything so strongly, calmly, and I'm glad she got away from that pose. I didn't charge her. One time working Christmas Eve at a Tex-Mex restaurant, this family of like 15-20 apparent travelers, hick Appalachia gypsies motorhome living folks, comes in 15 minutes to closing. Sometime during their time there I heard a boy, probably around 12-14, say to a younger girl next to him, you can't get pregnant if your brother and sister. Never saw that group again. Thank Gorb. I shudder to think of what happened after that meal. A man was with his side chick and her whole family, like a party of 10-12. The wife enters the restaurant screaming itch, whore, etc. and proceeds to rip the side chick out of her chair by her hair. More yelling and then cops. It was some Jerry Springer it. I'll never forget that blood-curdling scream as the huge hunk of hair ripped off her scalp. I was serving one table where this woman had an addiction to taking it in the ass. What's ducked up is she was sitting there with her 3 friends telling them about it, and when I came to pour drinks, that didn't stop her from talking about it, so I got the inside scoop. I'm not a server. I'm one of the chefs in the back. I'm in fine dining catering and I was working some fancy brunch event at a Greek Orthodox church in Redondo Beach. I was back from the bathroom when I heard a guest tell another, and now they're letting the gays marry. This country is falling apart. 3 out of the 4 chefs in the back, including me, were gay. We made sure to be extra gay when plating the food. Edit. Changed cook to server. Early morning posting is hard. Different kind of table. But I was about to sit at a poker table in Las Vegas and deal some cards. The woman in seat 1, just to the left of my seat, got a phone call on her cell phone. It was her daughter-in-law informing her that her son had been murdered at work. I will never forget the sound that came out of her mouth. The entire room stopped. 300 people just stopped from raucous gambling into complete silence save this poor woman wailing. 2 guys sitting at my bar chatting. One is recently divorced and has a new girlfriend. His buddy is trying to get him to go skiing soon. To which this guy says, look, I'd love to, but you gotta understand. I've got a new V I'm breaking in. I have a guest who regularly spends thousands of dollars on 2 or 3 bottles of wine for the evening. He and his date are dining in a private room when I open the door to hear her tell him no blood and nothing on the face. Bartender here. I once had a group of 4 mid-20s girls day drinking to celebrate one of their birthdays. Halfway through, birthday girl gets a call, leaves the bar, and 20 minutes later comes back crying. Her boyfriend of 4 years dumped her over the phone from a long trip in Peru because he met another girl there and they have so much more in common. He spent the next hour sobbing at the bar on her birthday. I once had a lady out to dinner with her 2 friends. They ordered a glass of Louisiana each. That's $600 right there. Every time I walked by, they would raise their glasses and toast to in a bath towel each time picking a different male actor. Turns out she had just gotten a lot of money from her divorce and she was quite happy to spend it.